ようやくお出ましかい。
あなたには犠牲になってもらいます。
ファーストフローズディバイド。
遅いです。エヴァスライド。行きます。
そこだ。
行きます。
こっちだ。
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Tuesday Train Battle Lounge with 2MK. Today we are playing Unist and Sibley, talking a lot of wordless, as we did last night. Generally though, you can ignore it all. This is one of those situations where we do have things to say about matches, but also have a lot of other random things to say about just about anything else we're doing. Meaning that we get to hear all of that. There may be points where we do mute because of absolute strangeness, but mostly whatever gets said is going to be out of the normal. We're currently watching OmniRabbit face off with Cosmic Wolf, aka Space Wolf. This usually gets relatively slow for many reasons. You can join us today. Any amount of connection speed is okay. If it's not too laggy for you, we'll probably be fine. Because of the amount we're spread out, you may have specifically high lag to different people. But that does not necessarily mean you'll have high lag to everyone in the lounge. We're back to the Orie Mirror, which has been a thorn in the side of both of these players at least a bit. It's a little lower on footsies than you'd expect, partially because Orie moves around her own moves so much, and then counterattacks with long lunges. Meaning that it's a lot more about understanding when to take to the air, or when to make the lunge. Since your opponent isn't generally going to try to stand in the same spot anyway, it's not the greatest idea. She does have a lot of good options, just for people who refuse to get any closer altogether, but that's not really what this matchup is like. We're only going for 90 minutes tonight, so we're already probably a bit through it. You should assume that this round is going to end around or just after 8:30 Eastern, where we'll drift off in various directions. So if you do want to get some matches, you can come on in now. For that reason, because this is, as usual, mostly practice, the actual who is on or off is itself entirely random. Now, for this game, that doesn't necessarily mean that who is next in the order is picked randomly, but simply whether or not the player wins or loses the match is not the decider for whether or not you are the system's plots. Meaning you should eventually get a match, but even winning will not necessarily keep you there. So if you do want to fight us, you probably should try to get in early.
ウィン堀江
Especially since we tend to play this as you just saw, fight one match.
リターン者の粛清
Here we go. I was gonna lag a while. This person with this Mika avatar actually a Mika player. No, at least not today. Honan isn't a character we see that much. At least not when we're playing, mostly because Honan players tend to be so methodical that they also tend to be very good at this game.
この私が見逃して
It is relatively required to be methodical, meaning that a lot of the time it's up to your opponent's skill in concepts of how to get in on you. Those who are good at doing that or closing at least enough to push her back where they can get an advantage tend to do better. So you can consider most of the time there's a big test of whether or not you know enough about the flow of matches to get in on Honan. It can be a little difficult and definitely frustrating sometimes. But it does help you to learn to think about the game a little differently, as she can cover basically any spacing on the screen she wants. If you've played other games, she's more similar to Dhalsim than most characters. So a lot of time is spent learning how to launch attacks from positions and timings that don't necessarily feel as if they should hit outright. And they definitely don't usually start combos, but she's intending to mostly chip you to death until the player is quite good, so you should often end up doing the same. There is a lot of practice of Honan combos required,
セカンドフロー
but again, people tend to be methodical enough to spend a lot of time learning them to prevent themselves from having to get chipped to death by other players. One thing that's important though is to recognize that you don't know whether or not your attack is going to land until basically the last moment. And it can be important when you do manage to get in, build up your understanding of whether or not you get to strike or not, or if you just have to find some other advantage based on your managing. She deals with forward assault decently well, but not necessarily enough that it's going to be a problem for everyone, merely because you can trigger a lot of your air moves directly. Let's see who manages to stay on this time. Unfortunately, my entire experience with this matchup, assuming that they stay as Honan, my entire experience with this matchup is fighting probably the best Honan in America, and that was the blow up you'd expect. So I'm not likely to do whole lot better either, but I do understand a lot of the principle of how to move around this character. Whether or not I can hit her and actually do any damage is a different question.
ディバイド
避けろそこや
こう
走れごめん
なかなかの腕だそこだ攻撃何らか次はないと思う最高の電源
But as has been said by Arturo, he's basically my knee. That move does basically reach full screen, so
ディバイド
it's not really saying a lot. And I will always ask, not that I will ever complain about it, why did they give this character a fire hand?
ペネトレイト捉え大爆かけるもらった空前だなかなかの腕だ残像だかけるもらった捉えられまい
受け止めるもらった
警備検査攻撃
避けろ死ね
Definitely something I should have thought about, but good play on that part.
サードクローディバイド
捉えられまいもらっていこう捉えられまい
やるじゃん
捉えられまい捉えられまいシバラ捉えられまい前に走れかけるもらった捉えられまい大爆
There we go. However, that player did play very well as far as I'm concerned. And you can get used to the idea. If you know which of your moves reach the spot you need, when exactly to interrupt her strings. She generally has ways to stop the strings, but then you get to get out of them. So you can look for that. Dealing with Gordoin the same way is nearly impossible. But you still have options. Whereas Phonon can cover any spot, Gordo is the type of zoner, when he's played that one, that covers every spot, but can only do so for a short period of time at a time, meaning that you mostly care about punishing. If your opponent knows how to maneuver themselves so that they don't commit too hard to attacks, though, your life can get kind of hard. And if you play defensively enough, it can actually be very frustrating for certain types of players. There is a way to deal with this though, just don't fight it. This is something that often comes up between Cosmo Wolf and that the easiest way to deal with him, because his entire game plan is to hit me when I move, is not move. Just get the life lead and sit on it. It's not a really terrible strategy as a whole to use on either side. And Gordeau is not the best character for stopping Seth from using that option. The main problem Seth has is that Gordeau tends to have more chances to have Warple in this matchup than Seth does. If you understand how to shield correctly, it's a lot easier to deal with though. You can use the shield to build up your own Vorpal, and relatively speaking, deny him his. In this case, we have the Gordeau Mirror, which is a lot more about who jumps, at least at this level. Neither player really wants to jump that much, but the one who successfully jumps tends to win. As you can see, they mostly spend time outside of each other's ranges, but you absolutely can, with Gordeau specifically, find a specific spacing and timing where jumping can reward you. Not necessarily because you intend to attack, but because jumping is a good way to get out of certain things Gordeau does and land close enough to him that now he has to respect your options. So there you see the big choice. That moment of, I've made the jump, and now you have to play with all my stuff. Always remember, however, that this game does not have a whole lot of damage off of early startup combos, so even though there may be much more time spent with Cosmo taking hits, he's not necessarily going to take more damage in the long term. Making this a close match, even if that works out, but there you have the jumping. If you're not ready for it, this matchup is hard to beat. I guess you could say that the person who jumps better wins, but that would lead to the idea that you should jump a lot, when it's really that you need to jump in order to make your opponent think about something else, and if you get the payoff, then it's really good. This is also why dashing is helpful, because dashing allows you keep the opponent thinking about the fact that you might want to dash, but it's better as pressure, just to mentally show them, hey, you know what, I can dash too. Against certain players, this can be somewhat overwhelming because they have to recognize when one thing is going to happen versus another, and Gordeau has a good dash normals as just demonstrated, so you have to decide, am I going to check him or not? But you can't just instinctively check him on every dash, because then he'll start dashing pressure, and that sort of dash often wins. But there's the conversion. So all clear overall. Who does get bounced? Okay then.
sacrifice comes to you.
This is often an easy-ish match for Orion, and it wouldn't seem that way because Merkaba has so many options. But it mostly comes down to how good is your bat dash. If your bat dash is particularly good as Orion,
あなたには犠
it's
牲にな
very hard for Merkaba to dominate the match until he gets to probably a couple steps away from. The one thing you should always remember though is bat dash a lot, because the stray hits he gets off of you doing it, especially if the player is not really convinced that they can command them, the sort of person that can catch a bat dashing Orier that they're not necessarily expecting with Merkaba and get big damage, you should worry about that person at a tournament, not in a lounge. Otherwise, Orion mostly has to play her regular game plan. She doesn't really want to stay in against this character because crazy things happen, and she doesn't really want to play neutral or try to anti-air him too much, even though she can absolutely do it if you feel as if your opponent is going to commit to something. I have no idea if this died here or not. This is a problem that Omni Rabbit is familiar with. Fighting characters who gain enough advantage in close that wanting to be close to them at the end of a block string is a bad idea when you don't have a quick throw or something of your own. Learning to do this and then get back out instead of advancing into trying to keep your pressure up is a hard lesson to learn for a lot of fighting game players. You do your own combo and you stop midway and escape rather than continuing the combo. Against Merkaba, for Oriya this is particularly important. So she's usually aiming to see, okay, how long should I hit these buttons before I backdash out? Even in the corner this can be helpful because Merkaba is not really the sort of character that suffers from having to deal with this. And Oriya is one of the characters with a backdash so long that she can get out of certain Merkaba buttons. She can't necessarily punish them, but she can totally get out. But you of course must dash back out of Merkaba pressure as well, especially if you understand where in the pressure string to dash out. For Oriya, that's lots of places, basically whenever you want to. Her backdash is just so long that she ends up getting the protection. Did I set this to winner stays on? I thought I didn't. Lin, which means it's time for footsies and pressure strings. Lin is not so easy to get away from. Not because she will catch or use backdash, but because she benefits so much more from the corner. She gets to stick to you and set up endless corner pressure if she really needs to. The easiest way for Oriya to deal with this though is to put out her down button just anywhere on the screen really before she does anything. That might be an execution challenge for some here at this point, but there's enough of it that is probably worth time. This is mostly because Lin's options and mental state shift fairly quickly with that move. It's not easily counterable by anything she does, and it therefore causes her to move forward in ways that you can counter by uppercutting or sometimes poking with light. The rest is just a matter of blocking on wake up or backdashing on wake up. She is a pressure character mostly, and She has good enough chase that if she hasn't connected to herself to anything, it's probably fine. So, Backdash on Wake Up. Seems that they got bumped out or something. So we're back to our Fonon. Orie does cause Fonon a bit more trouble because she has both forward assault and her force function to act as different methods through the air. But Fonon can get to a specific spot on the screen where she can cover most of Orie's stuff. There, you see, is the reason that she can't always do it. If Orie can find her timing, especially since Orie's assault and force function can be used from airborne positions, she can jump and then jump again, and then sometimes jump back again, making it a little bit hard for Fonon to track every vector possible. The closer Fonon gets to the corner, therefore the harder this turns out to be. You see that Butler has actually prioritized getting to the other side or getting back to mid-screen, probably because of how meaningful this is in the long term. But it looks like this is going to be one of those weird execution requirements, as it's hard enough for some people to do the down-down motions that it ends up being limited. Despite being a zoner, Fonon actually has some fairly quick moves because it's just the way the game works. You are expected to be blocking or evading certain spaces, so she's allowed to have faster moves. As you can see, a lot of this match therefore is how long can you push Fonon to the corner without her catching the right moment to make sure she doesn't actually get home. But mostly this is where your forward assault comes in. Not because again you intend to strike with it, but because it forces her to focus on more parts of the match and therefore opens up your ground approach. Orie can also use her, we keep on calling it a stand. She can use her stand to protect herself from some Fonon projectiles while she's repositioning herself. Let's see who shifts. Okay, rotation around. The general adaptation of a Fonon player to Seth's movement is to do more of her low attacks and not worry so much about whether or not he gets it from the air. This is usually easiest to do in the long term because Seth is a fast character with a slow walk speed. Now, it's not that the Seth player can necessarily do that much about this, other than to spend a lot of time figuring out how exactly to get their air approach perfect. But as I noted, the only time I've actually seriously played this matchup is against LPD, so yeah. The whole, how long did that take? I think I got like 3 matches before I decided, nope, I'm dropping out of this is not going to work at all. There's the low.
Second floor, divide.
そこだ。
Not sure that was working, I didn't look at it. She's not going to give you a lot of time to charge up either. You really have to commit to it. Understanding when to stop chasing Phonon is also a skill you will need as any character. Sometimes you just have to let her get away because the only way she's going to get damaged is if she actually manages to get back in. And sometimes that's more trouble for her than you think. But I still have a lot more practice to do on that combo, and it looks like that player has a lot more focus in understanding when something is going to go wrong from the opponent's side, which is a good skill to have as a Phonon. You spend a lot of time with this character recognizing when your opponent has misspaced themselves, but very early into the movement.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
But it seems that they have moved on. I'll be continuing with the Gordo versus Orion.
First
floor, divide.
面白くなってきた。やるな。今のはきつい。
ウィンド、オリオン、パーフェクト。セカンドフロー、ディバイド。
Something we normally don't talk about in our other games and have no reason to talk about generally. But it's super important in this one. It's just how much proration, i.e. how much your combo scales based on the button you started it with, affects your effectiveness. Because obviously while it's easy to get openings and punishes with small buttons, unless you can convert those into advantageous knockdowns, you might still spend a lot of time using that energy. Ooh, Chinese Man 517. It's random. Just so far happened to be that it was always the winner who stayed on. Well, it was good timing in this case. Generally, you shouldn't assume that just because a player plays Hyde in this game that they're playing the basic starter character. While he obviously is given as that, most of the information you are given about how to play this game and whether or not to play a particular character is a lot more detailed than in other games. Most games will tell you, hey, start off with this character because they're the basic character of the game, the Shoto, the easy one. And many of us understand at least somewhat how to use this sort of flow, but Hyde goes a little further than most characters of that type. The main problem our Hyde players seem to be facing is Gordo just puts buttons in front of him and it works out a lot of the time because that's how he's designed. He's supposed to be able to do this. Your job is to get him to do it and then get through. Unfortunately, Hyde doesn't have a ton of ways of making Gordo hit buttons other than approaching in the exact same way is likely to get him hit by the buttons. So you end up with a lot of work on your very precise spacing skill to bait the opponent into doing something, or you have to time a particular thing. And against a reactive player, like Hospital, who generally has a good read on other people's rhythm, it's very unlikely you're just going to get through. You mostly have to do what you just saw there. Go around first. If you don't focus so hard on hitting your opponent, then it's a little bit easier. But it looks like they have left, bringing us on to the next. Carmine stands up to Gordo better than most characters because Carmine can put something on the ground that won't necessarily disappear, move that something forward to attack Gordo with it, and if Gordo chooses to come forward instead because he doesn't feel like being zoned, then the puddle's still there. All that happens is that Carmine didn't need to move it. Here's our scenario now, for example. Sure, it works that Gordo could do things, and he has gotten past the puddle this time. But it's going to continue to be a problem, and puddles can attack you when they are behind you. This is also one of those matches where Carmine doesn't actually have to spend a lot of his health on things. Or rather, when he does spend the health, he gets a really big reward if it works. And Gordeau's moves are slow enough that getting that situation to his advantage is a little harder. Mostly, it is exactly as you see. The long-range snatcher grab tends to help because of the way Carmine moves. But once Carmine has Warple, Gordeau has to go on the offensive again. Try not to be too predictable about it, but it did work out that time. So with Warple reclaimed and your bullet in the corner, defense is probably decent as an option here. One can whiff punish Gordeau's buttons with the toggle if you're really aware, but this is a chore at minimum. Because of Gordeau's flow, it's actually relatively difficult for him to lose Warple entirely in this matchup if you're playing even somewhat seriously. So oddly, he gets to zone Carmine while still sometimes ending up with a Warple, as long as he doesn't ever get pushed into a situation where he has to block for long periods. Is likely to help out. Of course, if you're facing a very good Carmine with strong enough set play, once you do get hit once, you have very little chance of surviving because of what Gordeau is like as a character. Poirier often has to make a hard decision in this matchup because, as with Lyn, she can put down the bubble of her stand to make sure that if he just throws out buttons, he'll get hit. But this only works if you convince Gordeau to not just straight up throw buttons. If he's in the right spacing, and you both happen to try to do that at the same time, it's no benefit at all. So she gets to use a lot more of the other moves related to her stand, as we call it, to play full footsies in the zoning position, basically to chop him with the sword. While this move is punishable, and relatively punishable for Gordeau even, he doesn't get a lot off of it, and it forces him to play a game in which she gets to do what she wants, at least somewhat. When she dashes, he can't necessarily react in time, due to the nature of his moves. And when she jumps, he has to be on point and ready constantly. Therefore, it's up to Gordeau to get Poirier as close to the corner as possible, so she has nowhere to retreat to when he's swinging buttons at her. How exactly you do this as the Gordeau player is up to you. But just regularly hitting buttons is not likely to be successful at it. So understanding how to dash and guard and similar things often comes up. As you can see, as soon as Gordeau gives her too much space, she can just call out the circle, the bubble form of the stand, and he's just lost round period. And nearly none of his moves, at least not the ones that she has trouble reacting to, will ever manage to give her a lot of trouble. Basically, as you practice more, most things he wants to do at that spacing become reactable, and it's a matter of your decisions in neutral. So this is a very sort of advancing footsies. The idea is force Gordo to have some reaction to something, and then take the space into use if he has to slow down. It is one of the things that gives this game a reputation for full-screen footsies. Because these players are absolutely playing normal footsies, they're just doing it from basically a full screen away. Orie has reclaimed her space. And gotten control of it with that one jump, which basically hadn't been used any time before then.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
ようやくお出ましかい。
定めに従い、光の鉄槌を。
ファーストクローズ、ディバイド。
リバインスラスト。
そこだ。
足元が降りて。リバインスラスト。
隠したてる。
リバインスラスト。エヴァース。書いてみせる。
それでもここだ。
リバインスラスト。
やるな。足元だ。今のは惜しかったな。
足元が降りて勝負。
どうそんな。リトル。なんだ。暗いな。面白くなってきた。それでも終わり。足元が降りてください。やるな。
油断しなさい。立ちなさい。まだ終わってはいません。
セカンドクローズ、ディバイド。
やります。書いてみせる。
こっちだ。そこだ。
リバインスラスト。
今のは惜しかったな。そこだ。
リバインスラスト。
今のは惜しかったな。それで終わり。ほら。隠したてる。ほら。
最後まで分かりました。
面白くなったなよ。
リバインスラスト。リバインスラスト。
足元が降りて。ほらよ。エイムオープニング。スライド。きっと甘く見せる。
やります。
足元がエイムオープニング。アマチュアだな。
サードクローズ、ディバイド。
It is for reasons like that that we made it such an important thing that our Gordobot can do slide. If your Gordobot is not able to do slide as a regular thing, you're not going to learn a lot of the full sort of strategy of this character in a lot of matchups. Because even if you did manage to react in time, you would still be confused by a certain thing that happens. Asgore though, when you put yourself into that situation, you eventually do need to jump again or assault forward just to set up a better situation for yourself. If you're too low on health, you've probably already lost it, as it's almost impossible to open Orie up with Gordeau from that spacing. More Merkaba! But Gordeau's backdash is nowhere near good enough to do the same thing as Orie does. Nor does he usually manage to anti-air Merkaba all that well. In fact, one of his better options against his character is to dash forward. Not because it will protect him from a whole lot, but because Merkaba gets to control too much of the game if he doesn't. Generally, one dashes forward, but without using any of your dashing moves. You're more so looking for your opportunity to use pretty much anything else, so you're dashing and watching Merkaba. This works primarily because many of Merkaba's better moves for keeping your opponents out are so slow that if you were just dashing and nothing else, you could jump out of some of them on reaction, or assault over them on reaction. They're not strong moves when it comes to zoning, they're strong moves when it comes to attacking from far away, which is hard to understand when you're first getting used to playing moves. But as we mentioned when we were discussing this character, Merkaba is not really trying to zone you. He's trying to control a ton of space in front of himself so that when he decides to go in, you probably aren't going to do anything about it. What he does not do is attack right under him very well. He does have the option, definitely, but if there were to be a discussion of what his blind spot is, that'd probably be it. You don't up to this time. Okay then, yes. Oh, we get to see this much of it. On Sante's side, this is likely to be more frustrating as he has not had enough time relative to Ami Rabbit's opportunities to train the whole Kata 32 from Street Fighter style backdash with punish things. Only some training with Larabot has been done. And without it, there's not much else you can do, because you're spending a lot of time trying to get in on this character, and then once you do, if you don't manage to land a hit, you have to go back out again. For getting out of bad situations, she does still get the main options of using her force function, and certainly with punishes that only she can do, but overall, you can see it already. Merkaba has too many slightly advanced moves. He's a very sticky character. Constantly stays in your face, and if you're not super used to his movements to know when exactly his pressure strength is, you really should just get out of it. Because he's eventually going to make the right decision, and you're going to get caught. In fact, there are few characters that embody that feeling quite as much as Mikasa. I'm eventually going to pick the right thing, and you're going to die. So it definitely helps that Olia is a character with one of the biggest solutions to this. Okay, it looks like you're going to fight from there, so I'm backdashing now. This is the match we've all been waiting for, basically. This matchup can be played as wildly as you like, but it is possible to play it as footsies. Whether or not that's fun for you has a lot more to do with how much you accept or enjoy having to track a character that moves into the air just a little bit sometimes. And that applies to both players, because that's what both of these characters are. Characters who occasionally move into the air in footsies. One issue that Center often faces though is that it's easier to fight Zen by backing off from him, which means he eventually gets a lot of space. Fortunately for him, I get really frustrated at having to chase someone for this long. Depending on the situation, eventually our matches evolve into Yeti the Life Lead and leaving, or me looking to do a very specific type of pressure, just so that I don't have to chase Olia around the screen. As I'm not specifically interested in winning today, I'm probably just going to continue practicing the Seth thing, but as an overall flow goes, there's no real reason Seth has to play the game in that direction, because all of Olia's spacings, once he gets the orb out and correctly placed, just don't work anymore. She gets into the wrong position constantly. However, I can get sort of into the long play version of this if you think a lot about movement.
らえられまい。貫く。やりますね。エヴァージョン。なかなかのお前の意志は拒絶。逃がさん。エヴァージョン。行きます。競泳だ。エヴァージョン。捕らえられまい。捕らえられまい。
Part of it is, of course, the fact that Orie does have such a long backdash that choosing to use it at any point resets the entire situation between the two of them. And if Seth reacts to it, it doesn't give him any advantage. I mean, he can't catch her, but he doesn't necessarily try.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
あなたには犠牲になってもらいます。
ファーストクローズ、ディバイド。いなくって重さ。
One of the things that makes this matchup hard for Orie is the fact she's not a character so good at cross-ups. She's very good at getting to the position for crossing up, but obviously by balance, she isn't good at actually doing the crossings up part. You can do some things with this though. She does have a way to activate attack, specifically the aerial version of her that's called Stand, that does have a benefit to you on that jump, but you do it more so as at the beginning, meaning that it's not really a cross-up because you haven't had the option of deciding whether or not to make the attack at the height of the jump. You could say it is a cross-up in the sense that it can feel like, and occasionally I think it can be a left-right mix-up, but from the perspective of is the player actually landing a cross-up style attack. Depends on your definition of cross-up, obviously. Fortunately, for those who are executionally challenged at certain ways, it is not actually a TK version of the game. It is specifically, I am here, and I'm going to do this in a relatively relaxed way, without specifically aiming to do it as instantly coming to the ground. The better response from the other Orie who's expecting this, therefore, is actually to do the blind thrust. If you have enough health, that's probably just fine to do outright. You will get punished sometimes, but it can be better than ending up in the other situation. One place where it really matters though is when you're on defense and just about to be cornered. Picking the correct moment to do that move is very helpful because the opponent must be more susceptible to it if they don't want to end up playing neutral. If they want to keep on pushing you to the corner and hoping to get some advantage, even if they don't do it every moment, they have to skew the amount of time they spend doing this enough that it raises your chances of being successful.
あなたには犠牲になってもらいます。
ファーストクローズ、ディバイド。
行きます。
There you go. As you can see, pushing Gordo out and then managing to use those moves basically means he never quite gets to a position he wants to be in. He has to commit much harder, making him much more punishable. The judgment of whether or not you should continue your attack after hitting enough buttons to push it out is the pure judgment call on this game. It mostly has to do with how patient you think the Gordo player is. If you feel as if you can read their movements, but aren't sure if they're going to attack, your better option is to block. But this becomes difficult because most of us get tense over time. We go, well, they haven't attacked yet, and that usually makes us feel more and more like we're going to. But the problem with this is, a lot of the time, deciding whether or not to hit someone with a move like that is as much of a read as it is a spacing thing. If you decide to do it, since the moves have relatively slow startup, characters like Gordo who can easily reach you more quickly and technically have faster moves. If you both made the decision at the same time, you tend to lose. Making it a little bit more difficult because you have to decide, should I go on the offensive instead at this moment, and in what way? This strategy, however, does work quite well for the most part. If you're perfectly spaced, Gordo will basically have no repeating buttons whatever. He does have a solution to this, but it involves walking away. This also works, but it does mean that you get more benefit out of the low version of your stand. Because while Oria's lows don't generally reach Gordo at that spacing we're talking about, when he's not going to walk away from her, that one does. So you can decide if your main matchup should be just tripping Gordo's ankles with your attack. Because he really has to respect it, more so than most characters. And Orion once again makes the great escape and wins on the red card. So this time I'm going to go in a little harder. Anyone who's watched these streams enough knows that that is my eventual response to a patient opponent who is watching to see how well they can stop Seth or any other character I play, is to get better at not being stoppable. But Seth has more tools than I've been using. The main problem with those tools is that, like most characters of this type, he's not really allowed to break up too many rules of the game. Meaning that for the most part, if you back away from him enough, you should be tactically correct in how you are blocking. Which forces him to rely on a type of whip punish that takes a while to master. The other method you can use is what you just saw. If you think your opponent is going to try to get away from this move, there are other times you get to do things on. And Ori is not a character that can easily punish him for doing it. She gets a little damage, but it's not overwhelming for him. And there it's just a matter of speed. But the better the Ori player gets, the more speed you need. This is why if you watch high-level matches between these two characters, Seth basically never stops moving. And this is a character who does often benefit from chilling out for a bit.
A new sacrifice comes to you.
Without a lot of focus, Ori will make the orb completely ineffective.
あなたには犠牲になってもらいます。ファーストクローズ、ディバイド。遅い。遅い。カウンター。貫く。なかなかの腕だ。トライ。貫く。大爆攻撃。もらったもらった。くだらない。大爆。もらった。なかなかの腕そこで引くトライ攻撃なかなか闇に飲まれよ遅い貫く上だ逃がすお前の意志攻撃逃がす捉えられまいもらった逃がす行動逃がす上だこの程度で終わり認識したことがセットセカンドクローズディバイドエバージョン勝ち耐えきれるか引くもらった遅いもらった闇ごっこしくつろぐをさらせ捉えられまい
Fortunately, the other thing about Seth is that his character is really weak. You can tell where he is, the player is probably not good enough yet.
サードクローズディバイド知識
もらったもらった天空のペネト
いやもしりますディバインスラスト
闇に飲まれよ
油断します
何らしお前の意志は巨大幕
耐えてみせるここから
もらった屈辱をさらすもらった
知識
見切れるか屈辱を捉えられまいもらった
やります
こう次は何
知識
捉えられまい貫
やりますね耐えてみせる無駄です知識
なかなか
セークレットアローディバインスラストいきます
何らしもらったもらった見切れるか
伝説戦艦
なかなかけんこう
ここから
避けろかけん
いきますやります
昇降のベンジェンス大幕こう
ブレイクダウン
背負ったものの差だ
ウィンセット
It also helps to have a really good internal timer for how long your orb will take to fire.
気に病むことなどないこの対なる刃から逃れる術などないのだから
Part of what makes this effective is that the orb itself, while you can absolutely hit it, unless your move stays out really long and also is likely to tag Seth when he's on his way in, it does count as a full setup. Fortunately, Gordo is exactly that character. Meaning that Seth normally has to put the orb behind him and do it quickly enough that Gordo is not going to hurt him for doing it.
命が惜しければ邪魔をするな
ファーストクローズディバイド
大幕そこだこう捉えられまい
But since you even can't even do this off of knockdowns without giving yourself some timing, Gordo really has nothing to care about this. That, on the other hand, is one of your better options. There is a very specific spacing where you can use the orb placement to dodge Gordo's actual attack. The problem is that you can't do this on reaction to the attack. And of course, he can just dash forward into it. Because you've already done the move, you don't have any other options. So, if you're playing a high-stakes game, and your opponent is stressed enough mentally to not realize it's what you're doing, it's not that long. You can also do it at a closer range and do just there, but the result of this is going to be the same as before. My opponent is basically just going to block whatever, because it's easier than to stop the set. Meaning that my best option right now is to not play it. For safety. Everything you do imperfectly has the potential to cause you big problems. Still, as I mentioned, I am going to eventually just get better at going in. And it's not really that important to win or not. But we do have a lightning now. And that is also a function that Seth can use if your opponent absolutely refuses to pull the attack. Because Gordo is not a character that can attack behind his own head quickly enough to get out of Seth going to the other side, meaning that he has to wait and defend. If he waits and defends, then he can keep on being hit from the front, so it's just a matter of judgment there. You can dash forward as Gordo to prevent this problem, because once Seth gets high enough in the air, he can no longer come down on Gordo properly if you can time the dash, but Seth gets down quickly enough that it doesn't really matter. You're not going to get any damage out of it. These your answers to shield or just use a standard anti-air. But as the mix-ups get deeper and deeper, it gets more and more difficult for Gordo to get out of it, except when the player is very good. The main thing to do is to make sure that Seth never gets to the point where he's ever using that move on you. It's not the best of moves to be setting up on most people. It is not a common Seth move to be using in the first place. But it does have its niche uses. Note that this is somewhat untrue because for most characters, their attack toward the air is air invincible as well. The odd thing about Gordo's is that when he does it, it causes Seth to miss and end up behind him. Well, we are into our last on-stream and last match overall of the night because we did say we were stopping. So Gordo is not in a strong position here as he has not got Orion close enough to the point. Meaning that she still has the option to use certain moves and neutral. Namely pick at his legs, run up because he's defending his legs, that. Generally though, she doesn't want to push him too far back herself because if she messes up somehow and a setup or jump over her head, then she may be in the position to go down. Fortunately, Gordo isn't a person who has a lot of great punishes or sights. In these situations, Gordo's best option is often to use his own down-down move, but usually when much closer. His C2A is plus, it is fast, it is good against people who are defending. So when they get into that space where neither of them really knows what to do, there you go. He only usually gets to use it once, but it does resolve a lot of the situations that you deal with her. And because it is a special, and has approximately the same startup as Earth or Slam, it can result in them getting to use a trade, and the trade, while I would not say it's favorable to Gordo, it does enable him to have a pretty best of the situation. But there's a cross-up. Or whatever you would like to define that as. Either way, we're to the end of our stream. Thank you for watching and good night everyone.